Order. Welcome, good morning to the HS2 Select Committee in our second of 5 consecutive days of business. We're a little bit like the windmill, we never close, for those that remember the windmill. Okay, we start off today with petition 721, 725. We have Brian Adams. Please kick off.
Thank you. Could I have A1121 number 1, please? Yes, I apologise, it's me again. The two groups of petitioners that I'm presenting on behalf, unfortunately, I'll explain, the lead petitioners couldn't come today, so they've asked me to stand in and present for them. I hope last Thursday when we were presenting that I left you with an impression of the large numbers of people that are going to be affected by both the construction and operation of HS2 in the Ickenham area. We are 11,500 residents, and we also, as an area, are used by many other thousands of people on a daily basis. When we were faced with the petitioning process in May last year, we decided as a community, rather than flood you with thousands of petitions, because everybody in Ickenham is affected, we would establish groups with lead petitioners, and they and their neighbours then would construct a petition. So we ended up with 28 petitions, and what we hope to do today is step you through different parts of Ickenham so you can see what's the impact for groups, for individuals, for associations. I'm going to start with one specific area of Ickenham, so number 3, please. So the petitioning group that I am representing this morning are in the area of Ickenham High Road, and my basic chart of Ickenham and all the various roads through it doesn't really represent very well what that area is. So if you go number 2, please. Mr. Noad, he lives in Parkfield Road, and there's an arrow pointing to that. It's one of the roads that feeds into Ickenham High Road. The characteristics of that area are all of the roads there, both sides of Ickenham High Road, are effectively cul-de-sacs. The only access to the outside world that they have is via Ickenham High Road. Mr. Noad has lived there for 55 years. He's actually made a very significant contribution to the area. He is on the Ickenham Festival Committee. He's chairman of the local Neighbourhood Watch. He's very heavily involved in the church activities. He got married in St Giles Church 55 years ago. So we owe all of us in Ickenham a great deal to Alan. Unfortunately, he is quite seriously ill, and therefore he's not with us today. I think if we look at Ickenham High Road, I tried to demonstrate our concerns last Thursday that if HS2 plans actually happen and we start to put 1,000 lorries through Swakers Road every day, the knock-on effect across all the roads in Ickenham is going to be very significant. At this moment in time, we still get heavy congestion on the other roads in Ickenham, particularly Long Lane, where people are travelling from the north to the south. But we can see that Ickenham High Road specifically will be very badly affected. Number 4, please. So in addition to today's very heavy congestion, particularly in the evening where the traffic is moving from the south to the north, we have these new developments on Ickenham High Road with McCarthy and Stone and Taylor Wimpey. We have Tesco's to the south, and we have the expansion. We have pedestrian crossings, we have pedestrian-controlled traffic lights, and we have also automated traffic light systems, all of which lead to further congestion. So the issue for the people that live in this area, number 5, please, is the impact upon their daily lives of trying to leave where they live and use Ickenham High Road. And we're talking about a substantial number of houses here. In Parkville Road we have 70 households, in Oak Avenue 63, and then the other side of Ickenham High Road, Brackenbury Village with 500 houses, Ickenham Park 480. Today their life is quite difficult to use that Ickenham High Road because of current congestion, but if it actually is heavily impacted by HS2 plans, it's difficult to see how they can possibly run their normal daily lives. I think the other thing is to build on what Mr. Taylor said from West Ruislip. Should it be necessary to work on the utilities at West Ruislip Bridge, the gas, the water, etc., because of the emergence of the tunnel there, he explained that we had a gas emergency earlier this year, which took 3 days, and the whole area just froze. I can confirm that because, in fact, it was right in front of where my mother lives at West Ruislip. So for those 3 days, I was unable to get to her. She was unable to go out and do shopping and that nature. If you start to expand that to possibly months, it is very difficult to see how our society around that area can survive. How will deliveries happen to shops? How will buses run? How will people get to their destinations? I think also there was the concern very much, in fact Mr. Taylor said that through personal observation there were very few HGV movements currently on that road. And I think that's perfectly true, because there's no reason for HGVs at this moment in time to go down that road. All the HGV traffic is in Harville Road and in Breakspear Road South. Any HGV driver going down Ickenham High Road knows that it's going to be a very difficult route for them because of the traffic lights, crossings, that major pinch point beyond West Ruislip, which is called the White Bear Roundabout, and into Ruislip High Street. And there's, apart from supermarket and pub delivery vehicles, it's hard to see what HGV traffic there would be. So bringing HGVs into this part of Ickenham is very concerning. It's a cycle track. If they were to be parked on West Ruislip Bridge, I think we have major concerns about what cyclists would do to get round that traffic. And I think the headlines on the Evening Standard last night, another woman cyclist killed by a lorry, just raises further anxieties in terms of bringing HGV traffic down here. That is the essence of Mr. Noad and his neighbours' concerns about HS2's plans. If I move on to Mrs. Spooner, I can talk personally about that because it happens to be my daughter. She lives behind the Ickenham Pond area, actually at the junction between Ickenham High Road and Swakeleys Road, by the Coach and Horses pub. And I showed you last Thursday just a few photographs of the accidents that have occurred at that junction. Well, she's been taking those photographs because she lives on the spot. You said she was caught in an accident. Sorry? You said you were caught in an accident. She was involved in actually an accident moving up Swakeleys Road into where I live, in Breakspear Road South. If you look at my daughter, her family, she has 3 children. She's very typical of an Ickenham family. Her husband goes off to work using the commuting facilities into central London, 6:30, 7 o'clock every morning. She fights to get the 3 children ready. She takes the middle one to Breakspear School. The elder one, the teenager, he walks off to Swakeleys or cycles. So we obviously have concerns about his safety on his bike around that area. And the younger one, she has to take, the new baby, she has to take to a baby minder. She works in Stockley Park. At this moment in time, that 4-mile journey is taking 45 minutes. If the HS2 plans come to fruition and we have this potential 1,000 lorries. Long Lane will also become highly, highly congested because people will try it as an alternative. So she is very concerned about her future. She's very fortunate. Her employer is very flexible. There is some opportunity to work at home, some opportunity for flexible hours. But at the end of the day, if she can't get to work, it's very difficult to see how she could continue her career. Number 7, please. So obviously, the petitioners are looking for solutions that will avoid increasing the congestion in the area they live. They're obviously looking for solutions that would avoid putting heavy goods vehicles on that stretch of road with all the potential dangers at that junction that we see and the dangers to cyclists. Reflecting on some of the information last week that I heard, for instance, HS2 made the point that they were concerned about the volume of traffic that would go onto the M25 if they were excavating a tunnel at West Hyde. If you calculate the number of HGVs that they wish to put through Swakeleys Road, it comes to nearly 220,000. So the difference of putting HGVs onto an 8-lane highway versus a small suburban highly congested road with bus routes and bus stops and children walking to school, I cannot understand why that would be acceptable. We feel that really we would ask you to ask HS2 to look for solutions that would avoid such a situation.
That's it.
That's it.
Very important. Mr. Strong.
Thank you. We obviously looked at the traffic situation in and around this area last week, so I'm not going to repeat any of that detail. There is information before the committee which looks at the phasing arrangements for the different parts of the work in this area. And we did look at some slides last week. They're in the standard pack for the Ickenham residents in this area. And the reference is P6209 through to 6211. The particular stretch of road that Mr. Adams raised, first of all, the Ickenham High Road, is an area where there is some activity in relation to the first 3 years of construction, where there is HGV traffic, which is coming up on the slide now. I think, whilst that's coming up on the screen, could I ask for P6219 to come up next? But the phasing, I'll just point to the screen. Ickenham High Road is this section here. And these phasing plans show levels of traffic in the start-up, just over here, of 20 additional HGVs each way per day. So that's 40 both ways during the day.
And that's to set up the work site?
That's to set up the work sites in the first 18 months.
Okay.
And the Ickenham High Road's obviously heading off to the West Ruislip Portal site for the Northall Tunnel. And so in that 18-month period, there is anticipated to be 20 each HGVs per day. In phase 2, which is the next slide, 6 to 10, it's similarly a period of, I think, 9 months when there is a similar level of flow whilst works are being done at the West Ruislip site. But that's the level of traffic, HGV traffic, that's predicted to occur in that period. And then the most intense period so far as Ickenham High Road is concerned is in the next phase of 9 months only, year 3. So if we just look at 6 to 11, sorry, they take a little while to come up on the screen, but I think it's a detail, and I hope you can just see the same box is showing 90 HGVs each way during the day. So that's a daily flow rather than obviously a peak hour. So that's the level. And then after that, I don't need to show you the slides, but you can see them if necessary. Phase 4 and Phase 5, which is a 7-year period, that figure reduces to 0 for Ickenham High Road, the predicted HGV traffic. So there is an effect of HGV traffic on Ickenham High Road from which others take access, as Mr. Adams has explained. But in terms of daily increases in HGV traffic, it's relatively modest. I'll come back to the Swakeleys Road issue in a moment, but it's relatively modest. And you can see the levels of existing HGV traffic from P6218, just to give you a flavour of how much additional traffic is being added for this construction. And if we just look at A and B on the map, that's Ickenham High Road. And if you then go to the right-hand column, it's rather small, but if we can just zoom in there, you'll see, I hope you see the figures. The existing, i.e. 2021 flows of HGVs along Ickenham High Road without HS2 at all are 317 northbound, 590 southbound. So there is HGV traffic currently flowing and will continue to flow along Ickenham High Road. This is measured counts, and the volume of traffic that one's adding in addition is relatively minor. You may have seen from these slides, these ones are taken from DES. The next column refers to 150 HGVs being as a result of HS2. That assumes everything happens at once, whereas the phasing plans we've just been through actually strip out when the relevant phases are likely to occur in practice. So that's why you get the differences in numbers. So we've provided that level of detail. So that's the context for the amount of HGV traffic that's generated in that particular location. So far as the Swakeleys Road issue is concerned, we looked at that in a lot more detail last week. Sorry.
It takes me some time to get going in the beginning of the week. Are you saying, if you take, for example, B and HGVs rather than the cars and the... First of all, we've got nearly 10,000 cars and light vehicles, and we have estimated in 2021 590 HGVs. Are you saying at any one time the more likely number of HS2 HGVs is the 20 or 30, not the 150?
Exactly. What this in fact, if one scans left, this is showing in there are two slides. One shows peak activity and one shows off-peak activity. That's showing the maximum level of construction, but it shows it compressed into one slide, and so it's over-predicting, but for robustness purposes, over-predicting the levels of HGV traffic and assumes everything happens on the work site at once. The phasing diagrams I took you to a moment ago actually show it in a more detailed way to show the likely levels of phasing in those 3-year periods. And that at Sir Peter showed a level of 90 HGVs each way for a 9-month period. So that was the higher period. But for the bulk of the period, it's in the region of 20 to 30. And then for the 7-year period, where you've heard about fit-out and tunnelling, it drops down to 0 because the main work's been done.
So it's significant. And you might have an increase of 15% of HGVs, where the HGVs are making up about 15%, or it's more than that, 6 or 7% of the general traffic.
Yeah.
So it's noticeable, but HS2 would say it's manageable. Either the road's blocked anyway, or it's not blocked, in which case they can squeeze through.
That's what our modelling is showing, and that is the overall effect. Yes, there is an increase, but in terms of the road capacities and what existing traffic occurs there currently, albeit with some problems, it's not going to have materially worsen it. That's the prediction. However,
we won't improve it. It'll certainly worsen it, but it won't improve it.
Well, no, it won't. Well, it becomes more complicated because in traffic modelling terms, for the West London area, one then builds in diversionary effects. And strangely enough, traffic can improve by greater diversion taking place when people know that certain works are happening. That's part of the TfL's own modelling model. I don't need to get into detail of it, but I just flagged that up. But can I just add one further point, which is, of course, you recall last week we gave some assurances to Hillingdon in light of the traffic in this area, and particularly in relation to the Swakeleys Road, where, of course, the three roads are joining to go down to the A40, that we would carry out further modelling of those three junctions. And if the modelling shows a materially worsening situation, then to consider introducing measures to improve flows through those particular junctions. I don't think I need to get that up on screen, but you'll recall that was an assurance given to Hillingdon by letter.
It's normal for the project to have an agreement with the local authority about traffic management.
Precisely.
I think Peter makes a good point that as long as the traffic flows, at this point there shouldn't be a problem. But I've known a Ocado van or a Tesco home delivery vehicle park inappropriately, and then everything can get jammed up. Presumably the local authority are told if there's utility works or if there's something else going on, because I think the problems will occur when something comes out of the blue on top of everything else.
That's certainly, we've all experienced that, no doubt, and certainly that can be the case. But both in the Code of Construction Practice and in relation to further detail we provided, the things like utility works, which do have to occur, those are subject of seeking to minimise the impacts, keep the flows going, but more importantly, to have consultation with the local authority. And I haven't gone into the detail here of the traffic management plans, but this is all predicated upon traffic management plans which will have to be agreed with the local authority and approved for these levels of traffic. So they have the opportunity to see what we're predicting. So that, in a nutshell, is just a recap of where we got to last week. We did discuss on cyclists. We identified last week the Code of Construction Practice commitments in relation to cycle safety and HGVs going forward.
And when we discussed it last week, I've raised the issue of tagging vehicles so that people could know where they're going. So presumably HS2 should know where most HGV vehicles are moving. And the local authority would have that information as well. So if people went off the routes they're supposed to do, that could be picked up and audited.
Yes, and Mr. Smart, I think, gave some evidence about that in GPS tracking last week.
Nodding.
He is. So I got that right. So yes, there are a number of measures which are built into the Code of Construction Practice, built into the powers of the Hillingdon to approve routing, which will go to ensure that these routes are kept to. And of course, the flows are, yes, there are flows, and we've looked at the levels, but the impact of them is minimised as far as one can.
Can I some years ago I went to Birmingham and I went to the centre where there was CCTV, but it wasn't manned by police, it was manned by civilian volunteers because the police said they didn't have the resources to man it, which was watching key areas in shopping centres. Clearly, with the pressure on this area of the road network, will there be CCTV? Will there be somebody monitoring what's going on in particular roads so that somebody can look at the overall situation as traffic's being displayed?
Well, I imagine some of this will come out with the work of further modelling assessments of the junctions and what steps might be necessary if there's a problem. But can I just answer in this way, that one of the sorts of things that's introduced in relation to junctions are more intelligent traffic light systems, which then do monitor the flows like one junction to another and are able to phase the light sequences. I think there's one called Link Mover and another called Scoot, which those are both types of
cycle optimum offset something like that.
Indeed, exactly. And those, so they're not monitored. It's not monitored by an individual. It's a computer.
Of an algorithm.
Exactly. But it's not. It's an algorithm which is responsive to what's actually happening on the roads at the time, because it's monitoring real flows and then seeking to phase the sequences, so you can control further down the road the levels of flows coming in. So those are the sorts of measures which I think we looked at in relation to Buckinghamshire County Council. We're looking at those are the sorts of things that can be done to improve junction flows if it's necessary. And as I said, we're carrying out that further work at the moment.
I just have the feeling there ought to be somebody sitting in a box somewhere monitoring what's happening in Hillingdon, and people getting stuck somewhere just so they can phase the traffic lights or trying to help.
I understand that, and I suspect, but that the view is that the algorithm approach is maybe more effective in terms of the analysis and being able to monitor more points at once. I don't know the full detail of that, but we're not limited to what measures we can consider, because it's more look at what the flows produce and then consider what measures can be agreed to look at improvements.
Okay, thank you.
But the underlying point is that the residents know, and we know, that the road system doesn't have capacity for present levels of traffic, and this will add traffic.
There is an existing. The information that's there shows that some of these roads are operating in excess of theoretical capacity currently. So that there is an existing problem, and that's clearly there. We're aware of that. The question is the effect of HS2 traffic on some of these roads, and that's why we're looking at it in more detail. Thank you.
Mr. Adams.
Well, I don't want to go through the presentation I gave last Thursday, but we still find it incredulous that trying to put 220,000 HGV movements through Swakeleys Road is even conceivable when they're concerned that it can't be done on an 8-lane highway. The specific to Ickenham High Road, there is on HS2's predictions a number of HGV vehicles. We're a little bit surprised about those numbers, because our own observation is that there's nothing like that level of traffic. We wonder, when they did the survey of June last year, that might have been a time when it was the fitting out of these new construction sites at McCarthy and Stone and Taylor Woodrow. So there was some additional HGV traffic at that time. But that is not our normal experience. It is not an HGV route.
Essentially the project has to agree with Hillingdon, and Hillingdon no doubt would have some input on the figures, so that the local authority no doubt do a lot of counting as well. And we're some way off the start of the project, and I think these things will be updated and changed and as we go ahead. So if it were high, then that would be noted. But
yeah. So we think the addition of HS2 HGV vehicles is very significant, and if one looks at phase 3, if my calculations are correct, that means there are 30,000 HGV movements in phase 3 through Ickenham High Road and through what we believe to be a very unsafe junction. And I think I showed you last week the range of accidents that take place at that junction. So we have great concerns. I think also 2 years ago, when we responded to the environmental statement, we clearly stated that the Woodham model that was being used was not the appropriate one for this area. We have access to Brunel University and professors there and who understand traffic modelling. And obviously the fact that HS2 are now willing to model the junctions is an admission that that model was never the appropriate one. We would ask, building on that assurance letter, that in addition to the junctions that they've identified, they should also include Warren Road, Woodstock Drive and the Drive, because these are major arteries that feed from the rat runs also into Swakeleys Road. I think, again, we would reinforce the fact that should it be necessary to put in a road system to handle the utility work, we don't see how that would work at West Ruislip for any extended period. And the fact that it's only required because the tunnel emerges there gives us even more feeling that there's an advantage to extending the tunnel and avoiding such major effects on the road system.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Powell is sitting next to me, so we did decide to do it that way so we can move more quickly. Okay.
It's called hot seating.
Organised no maps, nothing. I live in the Greenway. You visited the Greenway on the 15th of January, so you know where it is. I listened to Parliament TV last Thursday, and I heard what you said, that you've had heaps of retired engineers telling HS2 how to do their business. So being in that field, I'm only going to talk about compensation. That's all I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about anything else. Just to introduce myself, I've lived in the Greenway 37 years, 38 years of my 67 years. Very happy there, and obviously I don't want to move, but what can I do? Since I was there, in 1983 there was a government scheme to actually concrete the Chilterns and to put buses on. That was cancelled. Then in 99 we had Central Railway that wanted to build some sort of commercial railway system, and what they did, within 1 month, 30 days or less, they gave me a contract with a mutually agreed price of my house, index linked for the next 25 years. Unfortunately, the company went bankrupt, so obviously I didn't get anywhere, and I didn't want to move anyway. But it can be done. It can be done. I got a phone call from a solicitor. I overvalued my house, as many people do. Then we came to a mutually agreed value within days, and I was surprised of how they dealt with people right down in the Greenway. So it can be done. On the compensation that we have here, I know it's been improved on the 16th of January this year. I've read it and read it and read it. A lot of people in the Greenway don't know anything about it. Either they've got their heads in the sands, or they have not been informed, or maybe not got the literature from HS2. I'm not quite sure. Nick heard a canvas to us to get from urban to rural, which is good news, because at least we can get some sort of compensation, because obviously the rural support zone is now before rural ascent, so we can actually go for the cash offer of 10%, or the unblighted price of the house, which is great. Okay, but the trouble is, what's the good of it? The 10% is almost as if you're giving in to what's happening. So I've ignored it, but then a neighbour might be changing my mind. Or the unblighted price. What am I supposed to do? At 67, I'm supposed to sell my house for the value of the house, whether it's blighted or not blighted. At the moment, there is no blight. We might as well be absolutely honest. I'm telling what I know, and I'm not hiding anything. It's not blighted at the moment in the Greenway, because there's such a lack of housing all over Greater London that anything will sell for a certain price. You might lose the odd 10, 20, 30,000 in the future, depending. HS2 is not really that widely publicised. A lot of people don't know anything about the impacts of it. So, the compensation was slightly improved, but I think they've got a long way to go. I read your report, which you came out on the 23rd of March, the interim report. You speak about the government position is not unreasonable. Well, I don't think it's reasonable at all, because all I would get would be the value of the unblighted price of my house. I would avoid the cost of the estate agent, which is £6,000–7,000. That's the only advantage I would get by going through the HS2 compensation. They're not going to give me any stamp duty. They're not going to give me any removal costs. They're not going to give me any solicitor's costs. They're not going to give me anything, really, other than the price of the house. But, of course, if they did give me the price of the house, because that's another thing, because if you read statements from Cheryl, Mrs. Cheryl Gillan, she quoted in Parliament, well, actually, it's the building opposite Parliament, at the end of March, that, you know, that her constituents had to sort of answer a lot of questions, spend £1,000 on accountancy fees in order to put a case forward. I don't know which scheme we're talking about because there's so many. There's so many schemes that you get completely and utterly confused which one you should go for. Obviously, in the Greenway, we have 2 schemes. Fair enough. Okay. Heathrow Airport, they give a compensation up to 150% of the value of your house. Now, I wouldn't be here if somebody offered me 150% of the value of my house because it would have been a waste of time. I think a lot of people may not be here. They may decide in their old age, we're not going to be in front of Western Europe's largest construction site because that's what it will be, in front of the Greenway. I'll be looking at it from my window, and many other people in the Greenway will be. And with all the traffic that's been talked about from Mr. Adams and so forth. So, obviously, 150%. Why is Heathrow Airport offering a better deal than HS2? Why aren't they sort of at least streamlining the same compensation system? I've lived in France for over 20 years, and TGV, the Train Grand Vitesse, was actually welcomed by the French public because it gave cities all over France a huge advantage. All of a sudden they could go to Paris, they could go everywhere within France. It took years, of course, to build, but it was not against the will of the French people, it was with the will of the French people. Here, it's against the will of the British people, it seems to me. A lot of people will be affected. The compensation is just not good enough. The questionnaire that I tried to fill in a couple of weeks ago, I discovered that page 1 is easy enough because I know my name and I know my email address and I know my age. But when you go on to page 2, 3 and 4, well, my wife has told me not to be rude because I could be evicted here, but it's absolutely pathetic, really, the way it's written. I mean, the proofs, it's all over the place. There isn't even a section. They talk about section 1, but there is no word section 1. You would expect section 1, section 2, section 3 and 4 and go through it. No, it's all over the place. You have to read into it. They want proof of this, proof of that, and proof of everything. And, of course, not everybody has that proof. I have it, as it happens, because I didn't have the house in joint names until recently, and so I did it with my wife. And 37 years. Yeah. We still are separate bank accounts. We're very... Well, it's one of these things you never get round to it, that sort of thing. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, John Ruskin of Stop HS2 called the exceptionally hard-to-get scheme, and I think he's right. Lots of people having a lot of trouble here. We don't hear about the people having trouble because they're just fighting on their own and, they're hoping to get somewhere. What Heathrow Airport are doing is that they're actually purchasing these properties from affected homeowners, and then they refurbish the property and insulate against sound before they resell it on the open market. Sounds a good idea, Okay, it would be said that if you live near an airport, you expect noise. If you live near a railway, you expect noise.
How many properties have Heathrow purchased?
I think that they're going to buy 160,000 homes in Berkshire, Surrey and London, apparently.
Okay.
But with this third runway. This is newspaper figures. Who's to know if it's...
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. I think, if you don't mind, we've heard enough about Heathrow.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, okay. It's just that the compensation for Heathrow, I was trying to put it for... Yeah.
We picked up the point the first time.
Yeah, okay. The compensation, I mean, I'm 67 years of age. I recently retired. This is the only house I own. I don't own a second home. I've spent more than £50,000 getting ready for retirement, and then by 2010 I found out that HS2 was coming out. So I've stopped buying anything. Even the carpets need replacing, but I'm not going to spend that on there. So the way I look at it is the government has got a win-win situation, because they'll get stamp duty out of me when I move, which I will not be compensated for. There'll be VAT on the solicitor's fees, on everything that I deal with, removals. And really, it's a win-win situation for the government, and lose-lose for me, really. And on top of that, I was diagnosed with leukemia last year, so I've got to make a decision quite quickly, in the next 6-12 months. But I think things will get worse, because people will be realising that this scheme, this project will go ahead. And of course, there could be problems with blight. At the moment there isn't, but tomorrow might be a different situation, that's all. So I would suggest that, it's great to come to the Greenway and all these places, but I think you should go to France and have a chat with SNCF and the French government. I know we're not very keen on the French, but but I just think that they deal with these large projects in a much better way. And if you compensate people, then people don't moan. They just take the compensation, decide what they want to do. But when they get nothing other than the value of their own house, I don't think that's good enough, really.
So the trip to France come and go last week in July, first week in August.
Is that where you're going? Is that? But that's what holiday, though, isn't it?
It's a nice idea.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
That's
Powell.
it. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Yes?
While we've got this map up, Mr. Powell, I just wanted to, I know you haven't mentioned this, but it was discussed last week, and that is focusing on the TfL depot, which is I think just to the south of Ruislip Gardens. And there was a suggestion made that could be the site of the new depot, with a link road going around the side of Norfolk Aerodrome, subject to the MOD agreeing to the scheme. And it would obviously need a slipway or something onto the A40. But what would your view on that be? Because it seems to me that that is a possible option. I mean,
well, instead of the golf course, it would be
it wouldn't be an option to move
TfL,
if it wasn't a link road to the south, because you'd simply be putting the problems that we've been discussing the last few days during hearing this evidence somewhere else. Often when you move something from one location, you're simply going to move the problem elsewhere. But in this case, it did strike me that you could solve the problem if you utilise that surplus land at Norfolk Aerodrome. But of course, that would require the agreement of other government departments.
Well, the trouble is the juggling act, isn't it? Because before blight turns up, you want to do something, you want to make a decision. But we've been waiting for 5 years, and we've looked at loads of things, and because there's so much information coming out all the time.
Have you looked at this particular
Yeah, I did. I looked at all the stuff that came to me last Thursday,
yes.
And it starts to talk about all this, but this is it's not definite, is it?
Well, no, I'm talking about whether you and other residents have actually done some serious analysis of this possible option in the past. No, because I only heard about it, I think, 2 months ago. In April, I think I heard about this TfL situation, Okay.
Don't forget, the information has not been out there, open for a very long time, and it keeps changing. It's like I saw what I got last Thursday. It shows a portal that goes right along the Greenway, right to the end. And I thought,
yes.
Well, that sounds good, because the portal was supposed to be at the beginning of the Greenway. All of a sudden, it's at the end. I didn't know that until I saw it. And I kept asking people outside here, on the legend, the black bit shows a portal. What's a portal? Okay, it's a concrete thing full of holes to stop the noise of the whoosh and all that of the train. But will it help us? I don't know, But also, it's what Mr. Adams has been talking about, and many other people. It's the construction. I'll be dead by the time this starts, in 10, 12 years' time or whatever. It's the construction time that is the difficult part, isn't it? Yeah, not the operation.
Thank you very much indeed for your...
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you.
You don't have to go. Mr. Strawn will answer some of the points you make, and then you'll have an opportunity to come back.
Sorry.
Mr. Strawn, could you say something about the portal as it relates to
Yes.
the Greenway, and then a little bit about what compensation is available?
Yes, and in fact, the two things go hand in hand because, as Mr. Powell's identifying, that there is an element of choice that he'll have to make in relation to the rural support zone. I'll just come to explain that. But sticking first of all with what's going on in this area, if we could just look at 6630, which is the next slide. And this, I hope, will be of help for a number of petitions that are going to come this morning. You can see the Greenway, which is access off Ickenham High Road at this location. And then the Greenway comes up here, and the red is Mr. Powell's property.
Yeah.
And the line is running to the north, and of course, you can't make it out here. The Chiltern line is in between the Greenway and the proposed line of route for HS2. Can I just show you that on P6631? Just give you an aerial photograph of what's going on here. Again, the black is the line of route of HS2, and just to the south of that is the Chiltern main line. And you'll see for the Greenway, there is some existing vegetation which runs along the back of the Greenway, along the Chiltern main line. And as I'll show you in a moment...
Is it above ground or in tunnel here?
The HS2 line is coming out of the portal, and it's rising. So it's actually, and I'll show you from cross-section, it's actually below ground level in the vicinity of Mr. Powell's house, but it's coming up, rising, but it's below the Chiltern main line. Can I just show you that on cross-section?
Metres, I believe. Yeah.
If I just take you to P6634. And we have two cross-sections. Both of these are taken from Mr. Powell's house. This is during the construction phase, which I understand is the phase Mr. Powell's most concerned about. So the cross-sections from 1A, 1B. So we just look at the next slide, P6635.
That's it, yeah.
And you can see what I was explaining, I hope. Mr. Powell's property is on the other side of the Greenway, then the ground drops a bit, and then moving along, there's the line of existing vegetation there, which rises up to...
They'll see as a jib. They may hear it, but they'll see the jib.
Yeah.
And noise contours?
And the noise contours in the operational phase... Can I just show you what's going on in the operational phase at this location just by an equivalent cross-section, P6637. So once the line's built, you'll see, again, the HS2 lines in cutting here, retained cutting. So it's below the Chiltern line. And above, just at that point, you'll see that's where we're putting in a noise barrier of 5 metres in height. So that runs between the Chiltern main line and the HS2 line, and of course then existing vegetation. So indeed, in terms of visibility, you won't be able to see from this point in the Greenway the HS2 line. And the noise contours we can get from P6641. And so I'm just showing you this side because in the ES there were some noise contours that were modelled, and unfortunately for this location they didn't take account of the 5 metre noise barrier. So this is what was in the environmental statement, and we've since produced an explanation of that, 6644.
So that's unmitigated.
That's effectively unmitigated, or not, without the 5 metre noise barrier. And if that's explained in the slide we sent out, P664, we're predicting effects on 200 homes. We've actually carried out the modelling with the noise barrier, and it reduces to an effect in the general area of about 100 homes. And I can just show you that on plan P6645. and if you may need to zoom in a bit actually, but you can see the location of the Mr. Powell's property, and it moves into it's still affected by a light yellow area, but the predicted noise levels are 40 to 45 dB and no more than 50 during the day. You can see that from the colours of the plan. So with the noise barrier in place, the predictions are that, broadly speaking, the noise environment has improved from that which we were showing. So that's really the first point, covering what Mr. Powell will experience during construction and operation. And I hope that helps him with the point about him having a choice to make, and one of his neighbours, being persuaded by what he's seeing to take a cash offer and stay. Can I then turn to the compensation? Because if you can see that from the compensation property zones, P6646, Mr. Powell, like many of the properties in the Greenway, Mr. Powell's property falls within the rural support zone in this location. I'm afraid that the yellow it should be a sort of more of an orange on this slide, just comes out slightly different. But he's within the rural support zone. And under the compensation schemes, that means he's eligible to apply for either the cash offer under the rural support zone, which would be a 10% of the blighted value of the property.
Up to a certain level?
Up to a level. It's between 30 and 100,000, I think. Okay. I'll just check that. So a maximum of 100,000, a minimum of £30,000. So there's the option to stay and take the cash offer, and alternatively, there's the option to exercise the right to require us to purchase the property under the voluntary purchase scheme, which I know the committee's heard a lot about already. But so there is that choice for Mr. Powell, for him to make based on what we're showing in relation to the levels of construction and the effects and the future in terms of operation. So it is important to understand what's going on, and I hope he's able to demonstrate more of that to him. But, of course, both of those offers are dependent upon Mr. Powell making an application to the scheme. There is an application form, and if Mr. Powell has had difficulties in completing it, there are people sitting behind me.
I sent an email 10 days ago listing the problems I have. I've had no reply, or only an automatic acknowledgement, you know.
Well, I hope you'll get a reply shortly.
And the point of this, Mr. Strawn, is that Mr. Powell, or somebody in Mr. Powell's position, could take the cash offer payment and at a later date require the project to purchase the home, and then they would simply net off.
Exactly.
So he has. You have more options than you realise, and so the fact that your member of Parliament has declared you rural.
Yes.
If he can get you farm payments, he'll deserve re-election as well.
Yeah. The only thing is, you're still not getting the stamp duty of the next house and all the costs. Yeah, okay.
But at some point you might want to move to a smaller house anyway. I mean, the point of this is to allow people to move on.
Okay,
can I just be clear on the cash? I don't want to mislead the committee. I think under the scheme, if one accepts the cash offer, then you're rejecting the voluntary purchase scheme under the rural support zone scheme. But you have the ability to apply for under need to sell.
Need to sell, okay.
And then it's netted off. I just wanted to be clear about that.
It will mean more forms to fill out.
Well, I hope as I say, I hope the information that's provided enables you to make
this anyway.
Yeah, if there are particular problems filling out the form, I do have people sitting behind you who'd be, I'm sure, happy to talk to you today since you're here.
As Mr. Powell goes, thank you, Mr. Powell. If it turns out that the form could be redesigned in a way that would be more helpful to more people, perhaps we could be told.
Well, we'll certainly look at that. I just managed to get it up on screen, and it may be just the description of what is Section 1 and what is just a preliminary of filling out the form is the issue Mr. Powell's raised, but we will take that away.
Thank you.
Your contribution.
And more people should be told about it as well, because I find there's a lot of people ignorant of what's going on. You know? Yeah.
Well, we have done quite extensive publicity, but I know what Mr. Powell said. And
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with all your
Half share of
treatment.
the house.
Thank you.
We now have Jill Watson and petition 7110 and 1458. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning. I've been here quite a lot lately. I feel as if I'm amongst friends. Right. Good
You want to
morning.
pour yourself some water before you start?
That's done, thank you. Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Jill Watson, and I'm representing the residents of the Greenway in Ickenham. I will try to be brief and not repeat what has been said before. And please bear with me, because I'm extremely nervous and I've never done this sort of thing before.
Well, so don't worry.
I'll give you an outline of our road, my reasons for living in Ickenham, and what we would like to happen. Can I have slide A11152, please? Okay. This is my bungalow where I have lived for the past 16 years. I moved here after my husband died suddenly 17 years ago. It's intended to be my last home in a quiet, no-through road with a nice garden. Next slide, please. The next 3 slides, you can run them through, are of the bungalows around my end of the road, which you probably didn't see on the 15th of January. Taken without consent. Okay. These are mostly detached bungalows. Some have been extended into the loft space, but most have the same footprint. Can I have slide 10, please? Slide 10. I'm using this Google map to show you the way that the road works. We come in here, and most of the houses on the left are houses. There's a couple of bungalows on the right, and then when you get round the corner, all of the properties on the left are bungalows, and on the rail side they're bungalows as well, up to the top end here, where we've got a new development called Buckland Court, which are flats, 1-bedroom flats, and along the top here are flats, purpose-built flats and duplex, which back on to Ickenham High Road. There's a good mix of residents, most single people and couples in the flats and Buckland Court, families in the houses, and a very large percentage of older and retired people in the bungalows. Being kind, I would estimate the average age of our road is definitely over 55. There are a couple of younger families in the bungalows who are renting the properties. Can I have slide 6, please? This is my back garden, taken in the summer. I planted the bottom of the garden with several trees to mask the railway embankment, which also has trees on it, together with far too many brambles. Next slide, please. And this is my back garden taken in the winter, when you can see more of the division of the trees. You can see here the leafless trees at the back are the ones on the golf course. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides show, the next one, my bird visitors who come. The jay visits quite often, the parakeets not quite so. We get green woodpeckers, which are difficult to photograph, and the lesser spotted woodpecker, which I haven't managed to photograph at all. And we see red kites swooping about on the thermals. We're also visited at night by foxes and a badger. Can I have the Google slide back again? I think it was number 10. Okay. When the construction takes place on the golf course, all of these trees along here will be taken out while they turn it into a construction site. This will affect a lot of the birds who live in the area and will also spoil the view that I have now, as will the residents who live on my side of the road. Can I have the next slide, please? The next two slides I really wanted to put together, but I'm not that clever. This one shows the end of the Greenway with the construction site and where it affects Hoylake Crescent as well. And then the next slide, please, shows you more of the Greenway. I did want to put them together, but they're on different scales, so that the lines didn't match up. They also show the compensation bands as proposed, which I will come back to a little bit later, but not in as much detail as Geoff did.
Big W of West Ruislip, isn't that right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we're over to the left of that. The utilities work to be done at 105 and 107 will be covered by Gayle, Metcalfe and Pauline Woodhams later this afternoon. I did attend a meeting with HS2 on the 4th of June with two of my neighbours, and we weren't given any satisfactory answers to the anticipated noise levels of conveyor belts, nor of the light pollution, except they referred us to section 61 of the Code of Practice repeatedly, which said that it would be monitored by the council, which I was a bit disappointed about, because as a taxpayer I'm paying for a railway scheme that I know do not want or need, and as a council taxpayer I'm paying my local council to monitor the pollution levels, noise levels of a scheme that I don't want either. So I'm getting paid twice. My last slide, please. My last slide was difficult to procure and not quite what I wanted to show. When this railway is finished, there will be overhead gantries with power cables replacing the trees. I think the birds will know the difference and won't be nesting there, and I'm sure that an artist's impression of the way it will look much better, but not necessarily the way it will look. I moved to Ickenham with my husband and son in 1986 from Harrow to live in a more rural area, but with good transport links to London. My husband worked for London Underground until his death. It's a lovely area with local shops, easy access to motorways, plenty of country walks and places to go. In fact, a couple of Sundays ago I was on Ickenham Marsh with other volunteers to try and get rid of the Himalayan balsam, which is very invasive if not kept under control. There is a great community spirit here. We celebrate Ickenham Festival every other year, which is very well supported. People open their gardens during festival week to make money for their favourite charities, ending on Gala Day with a fete, which is always well attended, and ending with an evening open-air concert followed by fireworks. I play tennis at Swakeleys Tennis Club. I'm membership secretary of our local horticultural society, which has over 600 households as members. Phil Taylor covered graphically on Thursday what the noise levels are likely to be on the golf course construction site. He mentioned specifically about the noise levels for the residents of the Greenway, as well as the traffic chaos gridlock for all the residents of Ickenham and surrounding areas. Unfortunately, it won't just be the construction noise that will be heard by residents of the Greenway. When the railway is operational, there will only be seconds of silence before the next train, if the 14 trains an hour does actually happen. When this railway scheme was first announced, I was concerned about the noise level of the trains and the frequency that they would be passing my garden. However, when in June 2013 I found out that there would be this construction site on the golf course, I was treated by my GP for depression for 6 months. I then bucked my ideas up and decided to do something to try and change it rather than just let it happen. I've got to say that what I heard from, I can't remember if it was Mr. Mould or Mr. Strawn last Monday, it made me feel that it might be better to drop a bomb on the Greenway rather than expect us to live through this construction. Several of my neighbours will have to put up with the noise to the end of their lives, as they will not live long enough to see it finished. Indeed, if it gets completed on time, I will be 80 when it is completed. We will not be able to sit in our gardens and enjoy the birdsong, see the butterflies on the flowers, because of the anticipated level of noise, and dust will keep us indoors with windows firmly shut. And when it is operational in 2026, due to the anticipated frequency of the trains. The compensation scheme, as Geoff said, has some restrictions on it. He didn't mention that actually you need to be an owner-occupier in order to claim the benefit. If I wanted to move, I would want to stay within Ickenham. If I wanted to get away from this, there is nowhere else to go within Ickenham, and I could not afford, even with the full price of my bungalow, to find an equivalent bungalow in Ickenham. As Geoff said, I would have to pay the stamp duty and removal fees. And no house, even if it's brand new, that you move to, always has to have changes. There's always money to be spent. Everyone in Ickenham will be affected by the construction, with the extra traffic, poor air quality, and just the inconvenience of not being able to get to the local shops as easily, but with no compensation payable unless you're within 300 metres of the line. This particularly affects those residents, in my opinion, in Breakspear Road South and Harville Road. Finally, I would like to say that I have been to several of the petition hearings, but was amazed last Monday afternoon, I think it was Mr. Mould who was here, tell us that we should consider it a benefit that we will be able to use Old Oak Common to visit Birmingham by HS2. Old Oak Common is nowhere near Ickenham or Hillingdon for that matter. It's close to Wormwood Scrubs Prison, and the nearest tube stations are East Upton on the Central line or Willesden Junction on the Bakerloo line. I think that HS2 is clutching at straws to try and find any benefit to the London Borough of Hillingdon residents. I am relying on the fairness of the Select Committee to ensure that our village will not be permanently damaged by these construction works. I feel that HS2 is not listening to the pleas from Ickenham and Harefield to extend the tunnel because they don't consider the possible extra cost is worthwhile. They don't live here, nor will they have to put up with the years of noise and dirt unnecessarily. What we would really like is to have the tunnel extended so that we would not have all these construction sites all over Ickenham. Thank you for hearing my petition.
Thank you. Yes, you did very well. We've had worse lawyers in front of us. Right, Mr. Strong, can we see where the property is? And
yes, well, just while it's on the screen, because that's only coming back to it, can I just point out this is a Crossrail construction crane to do with the concrete segment plant, I think at the limo site. You can see the concrete segments, if I just show you on the stacked up, that it's the sort of crane used to move those around, not the sort of crane that's proposed in use in the location of the Greenway. So I'm just... What shall I... If I...
I'm sorry, I'm not interested in the crane, I'm interested in the overhead gantry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is my point.
Will the gantry be visible from the Greenway?
Sorry, this is what I was referring to. The white overhead gantry is what I was referring to. It's part of the, as I understand it, part of the concrete segment plant for Crossrail. It's not the sort of gantry proposed in the location of the Greenway. But I just while that was on the screen, can I just, if I put up on the screen P6687, because we have a little bit more detail. Miss Watson, I think, Mrs. Watson is here to represent a number of the residents in the Greenway. So what we've done is seek to give you an idea of locations along the Greenway. I showed you a cross-section before, but I've got another slide which shows you various cross-sections of what's happening during the construction phase and the effect on the Greenway. And so I've just shown you where the sections are taken here, 1, 2 and 3. And if we can go to the next slide, 6688. And if you recall, 3 is closest to the North Holt Tunnel section. And so there is quite a deep excavation into the North Holt Tunnel. So at the lower end of the Greenway, the construction activity, once it's reached this depth, will be confined to this considerably lower level. And the excavated material conveyor, which Ms. Watson was raising an issue about in terms of noise, you can see that right on the right-hand side. It would be serving the tunnel boring machines. I think they're... so it's going to be very much lower level than ground level. As you come west, you would, I think this is somewhere 2/3 along the Greenway, you get to section 2, the line is coming up, rising up, but it's still considerably below ground level in terms of construction activity, with the conveyor similarly at ground level. And then section 1 is, I think, similar to the one I showed you a moment ago from further up the Greenway. Of course, it's starting to come up towards ground level. It's still below the Chiltern line at this point, opposite the Greenway. But this is during the construction phase. So I know slightly hesitant to try and find reassurance in Miss Watson, bearing in mind she wasn't reassured from what she heard last week. But actually, what if one looks at what's actually going on in terms of construction, Mrs. Watson can see from this that the level of construction where it's occurring is actually quite considerably below existing ground level. Hence, our predictions in terms of construction noise and the effects of the conveyor on her property. Can I go to P6699? Sorry, just before we do that, 6690. I apologize. 6690. Again, this is once the scheme is constructed, so the line is in operation. The same sections, but showing the effect of the line on the area. Slide 3A and 3B, which is towards the bottom end of the Greenway, close to the tunnel, you'll see that the portal is in existence there, and the line is effectively concealed by the portal, and it's at quite a deep level going into the North Holt Tunnel. It comes out of the tunnel itself in section 2, but it's still considerably far down in the ground. And then at section 1, of course, it's starting to come up to ground level. And then we have the introduction of the noise barrier, 5 metres, that I indicated before. Just on that point, can I just go to P6699, because I think I jumped the gun slightly on the last presentation in referring you to the remodelled noise effects. And this is the slide I showed you a moment ago. The principal change as a result of the 5-metre noise barrier is actually towards Hoylake Crescent in this area, which draws in the noise contours for that area, because that's where the principal emission was for the 5-metre noise barrier. In the Greenway, the noise effects are effectively the same as were shown in the environmental statement. And so there isn't actually, if you compare the two, there isn't actually a change in the noise effects. So I just wanted to clarify that it's slightly further towards Hoylake Crescent where the main reduction in noise occurs from the 5-metre noise.
Because the noise barrier comes towards the west end of your road.
Yes, and of course...
And that's because the line's rising up.
Exactly. So it's Hoylake Crescent where that main effect is, and I apologise for jumping the gun. So it doesn't have a particular effect on the Greenway. So that is both the construction effect and the noise effects of the scheme. The construction and the operational effects of the scheme once constructed. It is a line, clearly it will have some effects, but it's running along to the north of the Chiltern main line. And I dealt with the traffic effects on Ickenham High Road, so I don't repeat any of that. But I've shown you, broadly speaking, the levels of traffic there would be. Can I just deal with the compensation schemes? Again, I've shown you P6646. Actually, I think, sorry, to give you the full flavour, P6700. P6700 gives you a better perspective of the compensation zones for the Greenway, and the red line is simply marking the properties which Mrs. Watson, I think, broadly speaking, is representing. And you'll see, because of the proximity to the line, that a number of the properties in the Greenway, indeed the vast majority of them, are within the rural support zone. And as one moves further away from the line into the pink area, there's a homeowner payment zone 1, which you'll recall is subject to the eligibility criteria, but it's a payment of £22,500, and then green is zone 2. So where it's slightly less. Those are homeowner payment zones that can be applied for once the bill becomes an act, and offer cash sums in relation to those who are eligible. There is an owner-occupier qualification, but we've just on a number of occasions discussed the reasons for that, which I won't go over again.
Mrs. Watson mentioned trees also on the construction site, which were being cleared. Is it possible that we could keep some of those trees, or the project would do
as I understand, it was principally the trees on the golf course side, where the tunnel portal area is. Yes, and that is obviously quite an intensive construction site for the creation of the tunnel portal, and so I think there will be some trees lost from that area.
But some saved?
But yeah, I think we're certainly happy to look at retaining those we can to construct the tunnel portal. But I can't.
It looks unlikely.
I think it's unrealistic for me to say that many could be, because that's the principal area where the tunnel portal is being constructed. But as you come in, because the access is in from the golf course, as you recall, there are some trees in relation to the access, and no doubt if those can be retained, that will at least have some beneficial effects. But there is, can I just put that in context, in relation to the Greenway residents, there is a considerable amount of vegetation currently. I think you saw the back of Mrs. Watson's garden, but in between the Greenway and the Chiltern main line, there's a considerable degree of vegetation already, and we're not proposing to affect that in any material way. There are some utility works which we're going to look at a little bit later on this morning, just in that location. So there might be some minor effects there, but broadly speaking, the main screening of the works is going to be achieved from existing vegetation on the north of the Greenway. So far as monitoring is concerned in relation to noise effects during construction, HS2 will monitor the noise. The local authority having the ability to step in if there's considered to be a problem under the Control of Pollution Act. So
the local authority can prosecute, but then, as with any other activity within their area. So if it gets noisier, then Kennington can.
Yeah, whilst I think it's realistic to recognise the effects that you mentioned in relation to trees during construction, if I could just show you P6389. It's in the stand pack, or 6689, if that's easier. Systems aren't responding. So if it comes to life, what you will see is the operational scheme with the mitigation in place. And you will have seen this from other plans before, but you'll recall that on the golf course side, there's quite a significant area of planting that's put into the golf course area, mitigation planting, and a series of planting running alongside the railway. I hope it will come up on screen shortly. It's 6689 in Mrs. Watson, in response to Mrs. Watson, which was in tab 8 of the bundle. You'll see on the north side of the railway there is mitigation planting running alongside the railway, but there's also an area of mitigation planting that goes into the golf course area, which is mitigating the effects of the railway, the permanent effects of the railway. So, yes, there'll be a construction effect, but in the operational phase, when the railway is completed, there is quite considerable mitigation planting in the area. I think I've covered most of Mrs. Watson's points, but
okay. So because it's coming out of a tunnel into a deep cutting and then rising, that will mean there's noise will not be as bad. Because there's a sound barrier as it's coming out, that will reduce the noise as well. And those in this section will mainly be able to get access compensation if they wish.
That's essentially it. And I think the context, I appreciate there are effects which Mrs. Watson's concerned about. The context of HS2 in this location is that construction rising, but with the Chiltern Lane line between the Greenway and vegetation. The effects are, as I've sought to indicate, ones which are not perhaps as bad as it's the perception when one looks at the cross-sections and sees precisely what's going on. I'm not trying to downplay Mrs. Watson's concerns, but if one looks closely at the plans, one can see the context of what's being proposed here.
Mrs. Watson, some brief final comments?
I understand what's being said. You haven't alleviated any of my concerns, and I will leave it to your good judgment to help me out with this.
Okay. Thank you very much for your contribution on your behalf and those of your neighbours. We now move on to Mr. J. Coombe, petition 1745.
The system is not responding at all at the moment, and that may create some problems for Mr. Coombe. He's got some slides to refer to. We're trying our best to have it sorted out.
Which are Mr. Coombe's slides? We've got copies of your slides, Mr. Coombe. Are you happy to continue, although the system is playing up a bit?
Yeah. I've already mentioned, my hearing is not 100%.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll try and speak up.
Mr. Coombe,
Yes.
when you're going through your slides, if you just mention the number in brackets at the end,
Yes.
we'll then be able to turn over and keep up with you.
Okay. I have a list of them here. Yes. Thank you, sir. I am the lead petitioner, number 1745, covering Milton Court. Milton Court is a road of 40 houses around a grassy area which leads off Long Lane. Nearly all residents are active and need to leave their homes for their everyday lives. I understand Milton Court is outside the compensation area, but it will still suffer in the construction phase, and the same is true in relation to noise. This petition covers numerous issues. In some cases, HS2 Limited say our concerns will be met by compliance, and I hope the relevant authorities will carry out their duties effectively. The main issues they do not deal with satisfactorily are firstly the excessive traffic which will use Long Lane, which is the main road to the A40 and M40 and connects with the southern part of the London Borough of Hillingdon. Secondly, we are most unhappy at the loss of open space alongside the River Pin near Chiltern Railway and the public footpath between Breakspear Road South and Harville Road, which eventually leads to the Grand Union Canal and in Buckinghamshire, the Denham Country Park.
Mr. Coombe,
So,
can I just draw my colleagues' attention to 6489, which is behind tab 12, which gives where Milton Court is. Carry on, please.
sorry.
I was just helping them in showing
Oh, I see.
where Milton Court is on a map.
Thank you very much.
So
It's that map there.
That map there. Thank
It's
you.
showing where you are.
Oh, thank you. Yes, sorry, I was talking about the loss of the public footpath between Breakspear Road South and Harville Road, which eventually leads through to Buckinghamshire. As a result, residents of Ickenham may well take less exercise, which I believe is contrary to agreed public policy. And the alternatives offered, which incidentally are incorrectly called diversions, are not realistic. These major concerns would be dealt with by extending the tunnel beyond West Ruislip. I understand the case for a tunnel has been made with the London Borough, by the London Borough of Hillingdon, and I urge this committee to pursue this alternative with HS2 Limited. HS2 Limited had supplied at the last minute a large batch of papers, which unfortunately I have been unable to absorb in full, and I do apologise to the committee if any of my comments have failed to recognise matters raised in this latest batch. I now turn to the slides. That's it, that's the one.
Number one.
Number one. Number one.
Okay. A1111 brackets.
I think we're still having problems with the monitor, so we'll just leaf through. Have you got a copy of your own slides?
Sorry, I was hoping it would come up on the screen.
Yeah, so will we.
There's a problem with the system, so we can't get them up on screen, but the committee members have all got.
Oh, right.
They've got hard copies
I beg
of your
pardon.
slides,
Okay.
so if you just refer to the numbers.
Okay, well, we go on from number one to number two. Concerns we have about the environment, about health, which I'll come into later, the effect on the community, Ickenham is a very active community, and I think individuals, you've got it, individuals will have some financial problems, and I'm sure that property prices, even though outside the compensation zone, will suffer. Okay, next one, please. I think I just passed that one on. That's probably not a matter strictly for the committee. Right, this is where you were going to put some spoil. It wouldn't look so attractive afterwards, but I refer to later, so keep going.
There are a number
Next one, please.
Can I ask Mr. Coombe, there are a number of spoil sites in Hillingdon. Whereabouts is that one?
Where was that slide?
That slide is not far from West Ruislip Station.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Spoil dumps it's in an area that can get flooded, so it is a problem. And I think construction works may also cause a problem. The area beyond West Ruislip Station, at present, if you have heavy storms, already get a bit of flooding. There's something to be sorted out there. Next, please. Next, please. This was an idea put to me by a fellow resident. You get spoil, and other people need it. And now, in one case, spoil from Crossrail got taken over to an RSPB reserve. Whether you want to go that far, I don't know, but there must be some way, I would have thought, of those with spoil being able to do a deal with those who need it. Next one, please. Well, we just call there, it is an issue, and would HS2 please take care to assess the risk properly. Next, please. The landscape around Ickenham is an attractive area. Do please not spoil it. And if the railhead at West Ruislip is built before going beyond, then it might make life a bit easier. Next, please. Now this shows a picture of a rather busy road at a busy time near West Ruislip. I think there is a risk during the construction period, less recreation, people who are already suffering from health problems will find they get worse. Emissions, and I come on to that later, noise will be a problem, must be a problem, and more traffic, more risk of accidents, and exercise, effectively I've covered under recreation. Next, please. British government are, I understand, required to respond to the Supreme Court ruling on excessive pollution in the air. I would hope that they would be able to do this before HS2 gets started, and in fact come out with a positive result. Can't blame HS2 for it, but it is something that needs to be solved. And air pollution, I'm told, I'm not a doctor, air pollution is linked to stroke and anxiety, plus the statistic on premature deaths. Next, please. Whoops, did you miss one? Yes. Well, I'm told that high-speed rail will have significant emissions. The higher the speed I go, the higher the emissions. So if something can be done about that, well and good. Next, please. Right. Wasn't too happy with this map, because although it does show where HS2 goes and it does show where Milton Court goes, to the south,
Point to where you'll, if you want to point at the screen, it'll miraculously come up.
Close.
I'm pointing to the screen. Right.
There's a slight delay in the computer technology.
Down this long lane, which I have referred to before, starts at Swakeleys Road and goes down southwards towards the A40, and then very shortly would lead on to the M40. It's also the main connection between the northern and southern parts of the London Borough of Hillingdon, and it's a road often used by emergency ambulance vehicles because they come from Hillingdon Hospital, which is sort of down on that side, and also you get a lot of police cars going there, so it is an important road. And you'll see also Douay Martyrs School. For some reason, Douay Martyrs is on both sides of Long Lane. So there is a bit of difficulty crossing there, even with the benefit of crossing. So that will also tend to cause blockages. And on the other side, on the west side, you'll see it says 2A40. Well, A40 bends round there and then joins up with the A40. So you can either get to the A40 along Long Lane or along Swakeleys Road. Well, if you've got all these heavy goods vehicles going along, you're going to go along Long Lane. But it just gives an idea of the picture. And yes, I think the problems I had with the map have been altered, have been dealt with by putting in the school, Breakspear Junior School, which has pupils both sides of Swakeleys Road, and also just under where it says A40 you have Vyners School, a secondary school, where pupils come again on both sides of Swakeleys Road. So Swakeleys Road is going to be a difficult one to deal with children crossing, both primary school and secondary school. Next, please. Number 14, is that right?
Yep.
There we are. That shows what Long Lane can be like.
Mr. Coombe?
Yes, sir.
Now that we have the slides on the screen,
yes,
you don't have to speak through every one of them. You can just say next one, we'll pick it up.
Okay, yes. Yeah, don't worry, there are some I won't be speaking to. Thank you. Well, that's just an example of Long Lane. Next, please. And I think I've seem to have covered this already. This is another picture of Long Lane when the traffic's been a bit heavy, as you can see. It's mainly cars, actually, isn't it? Yeah. Next, please. Yes, this is actually, this picture here shows Swakeleys Road going across, and there is a route promoted by the London Borough of Hillingdon called the Celandine Way. It goes through there, and it leads to and beyond the Chiltern line, and that is going to be closed off, which is most unfortunate because it's a very much used route. And also, even if you don't want to go on the Celandine Way, there at the side, it's close to a river. It's a very attractive area just for a bit of recreation, and we are concerned about that one. Next, please. This is an example of the kind of traffic problems one could get on Breakspear Road South, actually, because there's no footway at the side. The speed limit's 40 miles an hour, although I don't think any of those vehicles are doing that, and it bends a bit. Okay, next please. Next please. I think the photographer was a bit worried there. That's also Breakspear Road South, with the that railway bridge is the Chiltern line. Next, please. Now, you have probably already heard from the...
Yes.
Yes, I thought you had. Well, I think you've got the message, haven't you? Thank you. Next, please. Ruislip Golf Course, which is owned by the council, is right alongside the Chiltern line. Don't know what's going to happen there. It's not purely a golf course. Has, as it says, a wide range of community activities. There are sort of physical exercises, a physical exercise group. There's comedy sessions, and there's also a jazz club there. Be a pity if we lost them. And by the side of the golf course, there is a pedestrian and cycling route which takes you up to a number of houses. And obviously, a bit of golf is a bit of recreation. Next, please. Well, that's golf course car park. Next, please. Sorry?
We visited the
We've
golf...
been to the car park.
We've been
You're
there.
in the car park, yes. It's a large car park. Very good. The HS2 goes to the left-hand side. Well, and so does Chiltern Line. Okay, next, please. Yeah. By using the footpath I referred to between Breakspear Road and Harville Road, it not only leads to the canal, it does lead to the Colne Valley. It's a good walking area. Next, please. We would hope that one way and another there is a proper health impact of sort of noise pollution, etc. And also, if the golf course is to be closed, please can a new alternative one be found before closure. Next, please. This is another picture of Long Lane. As you can see, it's pretty busy. And also, it encourages a busy Long Lane plus a busy Swakeleys Road will encourage a lot of vehicles to go along the back streets, which, you know, isn't necessarily a good thing. Next, please. Now, this one here is this may well have been taken early in the day or later in the evening, but that is like that all the time. It just is very busy. It's at the southern end of Long Lane, near what is known as Hillingdon Circus, which isn't a circus, but it was. And then, of course, you get the bus routes are on there. Bus routes are very important in the area, and I think HS2 said that they will talk about, if there is a problem with bus routes, they will talk about alternatives with Transport for London. Well, I don't think the discussion will last very long, because the answer is there ain't an alternative. There are 3 bus routes, and they all come through West Ruislip. And, well, I think one of them, which goes to Harefield, you could, by going through Rickmansworth, make an alternative, but I don't think anyone would suggest that seriously. Okay, next please. Well, that actually leads in, Milton Court leads off there. As you can see, that's another example of heavy traffic. Next, please. Now that shows where the traffic goes. That is Swakeleys Road. This one is Long Lane leading down here. So it just gives an idea of, and there is West Ruislip station, both Chiltern Line and Central Line, and that's how HS2 is projected to go. All right, next please. We would be concerned at the way Swakeleys Road, which is very close to Milton Court, would be badly affected by movements of heavy goods vehicles, and we would ask that at peak hours, is it possible to reduce the number of them? And also, for the workers coming to West Ruislip, is it possible to bring them in by means of a shuttle bus rather than everybody coming in on their own car? And we also regard it as important that the 3 bus routes will run effectively, and one of the bus routes, known as the U1, is the way that people can get from Ruislip and Ickenham to Hillingdon Hospital. And don't think that people can go to Hillingdon Hospital by car, because one thing they do not want is people coming by car. They've got limited car parking space. They did explore the possibility of expanding it and have now said, no, we can't do it. So and in the last couple of years, I have been visiting Hillingdon Hospital many times, both as a visitor and as a patient, and I've always used this bus route U1. It's the best way of doing it. It's also important, as I mentioned earlier, Long Lane is the way that ambulances go, and also is used a lot by the police. So it doesn't want to get too congested by other vehicles. Next, please. Yes, well, we're outside compensation area, and I wonder whether we ought to be in. local authority, Hillingdon is going to have to produce a number of extra facilities, I'm sure, particularly crossings of Long Lane. So that will be, I can see local taxes going up. Next, please. Our local taxes, financial. I think possibly that's not a matter for me to deal with. Next, please. And that probably isn't, although one wonders, you know, there might be better things to spend the money. Anyway, next, please.
You keep turning pages, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there we are. It shows the satisfaction with the consultation. Next, please. No, the next one is relevant. Any mitigation which can make life easier, and I'll come on to the tunnel in a moment, but anything that will make life easier, thus avoiding some of the problems with the construction, will be helpful. Next, please. Does HS2 need to be quite such a fast route? I don't know. It's interesting that it is a possibility that it might cost less if it was going at a slower speed. Next, please. Now, the London Borough of Hillingdon has had a survey conducted which does suggest that a tunnel is a suitable alternative from West Ruislip through to Colne Valley, which would cause a lot less disruption and also save a lot of noise. And we do urge, Milton Court do urge the committee to get that option pursued, because it seems to us that it is the best answer. Next, please. Yeah, is there any reason why we haven't got it? There we are. Next, please. And this, I imagine, is the last one. Please, before the bill gets to the, I think I should have said third reading, please consider mitigation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've had a wide-ranging...
and can I just say my concluding summary? Ickenham seriously affected in the construction phase. Long Lane will suffer, or rather, a Long Lane will attract more traffic and therefore it will cause problems, including air pollution, which needs to be sorted out in any case. Opportunities for healthy exercise, it worries us quite a lot, and the tunnel is, we see it as the answer.
Okay. Mr. Strong, we've had a wide-ranging presentation.
I don't know
Mr. Coombe, Mr. Coombe.
Don't need to come on.
Have you finished?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Strawn, we've had a wide-ranging presentation.
Can I suggest, Mr. Strawn, that you speak directly to John Coombe and we will listen in, please.
And we know most of the answers, so you don't have to answer most of these questions.
No. Can I just show you P6491?
Oh, you've got it out there.
It's going to come up on screen, so you'll be able to see it, I hope.
Looks very interesting.
Yeah, it's taking a long time, I'm afraid. P6491, Mr. Coombe's got a hard copy in front of him. It will slowly come onto the screen. It shows the construction routes for the scheme. And as we were talking earlier about Ickenham High Road and the traffic along it, you can see here that the construction traffic routes we've been talking about are along the green dotted lines, and there is a construction traffic route of the order of, providing the order of traffic I mentioned earlier today, going along Swakely Road and then up the High Road. And you can see Milton Court is the red area below, and Long Lane is the road Mr. Coombe was referring to on a number of occasions, running down from the High Road down to the south. That is not a proposed construction traffic route, and so many of the concerns in relation to the generation of HGVs, many of the concerns in relation to the generation of HGV traffic from construction in this area won't directly affect Long Lane. If there's concern about diversionary traffic, that may be an existing issue along Long Lane, but certainly there's no proposal to add HS2 traffic to Long Lane and the areas that Mr. Coombe was speaking about. If I just make my points, Mr. Coombe, and then you'll get an opportunity to come back in a moment. We're going to look, I think, later on in a little more detail at public rights of way. The committee, because that's a concern raised by Mr. Coombe. The short point, in anticipation of what you're going to look at later on, is that there are some temporary diversions of footpaths during the construction phase, many of which we looked at in relation to Hillingdon's petition last week. Once the scheme is constructed, there are only very minor diversions of the existing public rights-of-way network. I hesitate to get it on screen because it's not working properly, but P5269 for the record is it's not in this set. But P5269, it shows the public rights-of-way network restored very much to as it is once the scheme's constructed. Can I just deal very briefly with a number of concerns Mr. Coombe's raised? There is a wealth of information which addresses many of those concerns. Flood risk, there is a slide P6404. We don't need to get it on screen. Flood risk is something the project takes seriously and has looked at in detail. There is a health impact assessment which accompanies the environmental statement, looking at things such as air quality and noise and their effects on health. The location of the schools, again, you're going to hear more about, but there is a slide P6391 which identifies where the schools are and the various crossing points used by people to get to them. Can I then come really to the end of what Mr. Coombe was seeking, the community requests? Of course, he's seeking a tunnel. I refer to our case on that in response to Hillingdon. But so far as the other community requests are concerned and the requests about traffic, the committee will recall that in the Code of Construction Practice, most, I think in fact more, of the things that Mr. Coombe was asking for are already covered in the Traffic and Transport section 14. I'll show it to Mr. Coombe. This is a extract from the Code of Construction Practice. Yeah, and you'll
not necessarily in here.
No, this is published material that came out with the environmental statement. It's a draft code, and it will be finalised with the bill.
Right, thank you.
But in section 14 there is a considerable amount of detail as to the traffic management measures which go far beyond even those Mr. Coombe is seeking but include, of course, travel mitigation measures to reduce the impact of the construction workforce on the local road network. So there will need to be the consideration of how workers get to the sites and to reduce their reliance upon the private car. That's already built in, as is, of course, site-specific measures, avoiding school time, drop-off periods and things of that kind, lists of roads which may be affected in vicinity and any restrictions. All of that detail is important detail, but it's already built in to the mechanisms that will have to be agreed with the local authority. So I hope I've covered the main points that were raised by Mr. Coombe and the main concerns. They are in large part catered for in the detail that exists before the committee.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Strawn. Mr. Coombe, do you want to make some brief final comments?
Yes. May I just make the point that traffic coming through West Ruislip, coming down here, and it then sees the construction vehicles going along there and thinks, my goodness, I might just as well go down Long Lane.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you will get a lot of extra traffic.
They have GPS satellite navigation on
and
them,
also,
so they can be tracked.
Whilst that is, the green line is a route for the construction vehicles, will every HS2 vehicle go along there? Or if they're not construction vehicles, they might actually come down Long Lane.
Mr. Coombe, it may help if I just say this clearly. Each HGV has a monitor. They will be tracked.
Oh, yeah.
If they go off course, that will be noticed. Action will be taken. So thank you for raising it.
No,
I think we're done.
No, I'm sorry. I do understand. I understand the point you're making, but not every HS2 vehicle will be taking the stuff away.
We won't be able to go further today. You're being thanked. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And could I also say with regard...
I think that's it, Mr. Coombe. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, can I just
No, thank you. Right. Goodbye.
Okay.
Right, now we're going to Mr... who are we next?
Donovan.
Yeah. Mr. Matthew Snoddy, who I think needs to get away this afternoon, and his witness. Thank you, Mr. Coombe. Where's Mr. Snoddy gone? Is Mr. Matthew Snoddy here? Where's Mr. Snoddy?
How long is this one going to be? 15 minutes, 20 minutes,
Okay.
half an hour, 3/4 hour,
Okay.
4 hours?
15 minutes.
Right.
6.
I have to declare Mr. Snoddy and I have known each other.
We have indeed, but not in the biblical sense.
We're just going to change your sign, so... Yes, please, continue. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you. My name is Raymond Snoddy, and more than 50 years ago, I came as a young journalist to work in the local paper in what is now the London Borough of Hillingdon, and I've lived in the area ever since. I'm joined this morning by two neighbours, Jamie Langdon, an independent television director, and Martin Hillis, an international oil consultant. Before getting absolutely to the point about the effects, 2 sentences. When I worked at the Financial Times, I knew a very intelligent young journalist, but even then he was more interested in the large picture than the small practicality of things. His name is Andrew Adonis, former Labour Transport Secretary. At the Financial Times, a good contact of mine at the FT said this in March: the government has made no convincing case for spending 50 billion on HS2, either on grounds of rail capacity or rebalancing the economy. His name, as you're probably very well aware, is the Lord Hollick, Chairman of the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee. But we're here indeed to talk about effects. To avoid pointless repetition, we simply associate ourselves with and endorse the case put forward by Hillingdon Borough Council, Brian Adams and Ickenham Residents Association, and indeed some of the people you have heard from this very morning. Of everything from congestion, safety, noise, emissions, we support that case. We will concentrate briefly on the views of some people in the road where I live, bringing it down to real people, Bushy Road, and as you've already heard, I believe, a road in which there's a 700-pupil school, for Express School. This is the first petition I've ever taken up in my life, and some things surprised me, others did not. I obviously was not surprised that people were always queuing up to sign my petition, but the thing that did surprise me, and perhaps more troubling, an unusual degree of political cynicism and exasperation, that politicians simply are not listening and that there was no political choice over this huge project that will affect all their lives so adversely. I hope this committee will ultimately prove such cynicism wrong. A few views then from the people of Bushy Road. Jamie, first of all, your view and view of a neighbour.
Okay, good morning. I've been living in Ickenham now for some 10 years or so. We moved to the area because it was quite rural in some ways. Having come from central London, it's incredibly rural. So we're saddened and obviously very concerned about the impact that HS2 is going to have on our area. And I'm actually quite shocked by the amount of people I speak to in Bushy Road and surrounding area that are also concerned. And we moved there because it, as I said, it had a nice country feel to it. It felt quite quiet compared to working in London quite a bit. And we love the area, but we're now concerned that this is going to have a devastating effect. In particular, traffic. I know that's coming up quite a bit, and I think it will do. And I'd love to come up with some other alternative angle to be able to put to you and put the case of other residents, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the congestion and the chaos that I think will happen in Ickenham as a result of the works that are being carried out. Already we suffer from traffic, from local waste disposal, skip lorries, all kinds of traffic, and lorries coming through that area. And I'm not quite sure, I have to say, how many of those vehicles come through. I know they come through Swakeleys and the surrounding area, Breakspear Road in particular as well. And sometimes, just with those, the volume of vehicles, from the waste sites alone is bad enough. I also know, and I've witnessed many times, if there's a problem on the M40, then the traffic just virtually comes to a standstill. And traffic will come off the M40 and will look for a cut-through. And of course that cut-through will be Ickenham. Now I've heard this morning that there'll probably be, rather than the 1,000 vehicles a day that I'm led to believe there would be, did I hear right in that there was only going to be 20?
On this particular road?
Yeah, but right. Despite how many lorries, HGV vehicles are predicted to come through Ickenham, any increase in traffic at the moment is going to be, without question of a doubt, I feel, disastrous. And it's going to cause what was a nice village, if you want to call it that, to be even more congested than it is. Over the past 8 years, we've already seen construction on the former US-American base near West Ruislip. And again, there I've seen an increase in traffic, obviously, with more homes that have been built on the site. And during the construction of the site, too, I noticed quite an increase in traffic just with that alone. So quite what HS2 is going to do to Ickenham, I kind of can't imagine, to be honest with you. And nor can other residents living in that road. So, on behalf of neighbours that I've spoken to, we'd like you to consider where that traffic's going to go. I know the spoil has to go where it has to go, but there must be surely some other way of doing this and not bringing further congestion to our roads. I live in a road that has a school, and 3 times a day that road is bad enough at the best of times. It's busy with parents dropping off children, but it's not just our road that's affected by that. The surrounding area is affected now by dozens and dozens of vehicles coming in and out of Uxbridge. Without a question of a doubt, extra vehicles will have an effect on that and will increase that. There's also proposals from the local authority to put in parking restrictions in the area too, which is just going to congeal the whole thing and make it even worse, I think. But I've got a neighbour who's asked me to point out something, if I may, just read you some quotes from
Personal
her.
view from a next door neighbour.
This is a next door neighbour of mine. And they've only been living in the area for 2 or 3 years, but they came to the area because, same as us really, you know, we wanted to come to a nice rural kind of area, a quiet village like Ickenham, because it's a fantastic place, to be honest with you. The people are in it, and the lifestyle in it at the moment is great. You know, it's got worse, as I've said, but this is Ailey and Lee, who live next door to us. And Ailey is an occupational therapist, and her husband Lee is a physiotherapist. So they both work for the NHS. And they both work at Hillingdon Hospital. They have 2 children and fear that the HS2 will have 2 major negative impacts on their lives. You know, it's really important for them to work locally and contribute to the local community, which they're very proud to do, and emphasise that there are no alternative routes to the hospital apart from Swakeleys Road, which is one of the major HS2 routes. And to quote Ailey, the journey is already very variable and unreliable because of traffic. There are already heavy good lorries from the local waste centre. More lorries of that nature will undoubtedly clog up and damage our roads, which is another point I wanted to raise, because already we see quite a bit of debris from vehicles in and out of the local skip place. And I mean, they went on to say, I know we are in suburbia, but there is a sense of belonging in an area that has its own unique personality. The disruption of HS2 into the greenfield space will have an implication not just on our generation and our children. That wasn't our intention when we moved to Bushy Road. So I just wanted to read that out on behalf of...
Thank you, Jamie. Martin, your view and the view of another neighbour.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I begin with my neighbour, Mr. David Poulton? I just want to read out what he said, which again is on the theme of congestion. I run a small business doing garden maintenance. I feel the main impact during construction will be the major increase in traffic flow in all roads in and around Ickenham. Reduction in room on the road during work will cause congestion, parking chaos. This is already becoming increasingly worse by local authority parking restrictions. Living close to a school, this will cause further problems on the roads, which in turn makes road environment less safe for both children, parents and residents. There will definitely be noise impact locally without a tunnel extension. We already live close to the train, yet outside the zone where government proposed compensation. But already clearly hear the trains that currently run on the lines. This noise can only be increased without the tunnel. I am opposed to HS2, as I feel it is really a waste of public money. There still does not seem to be any true evidence of support the government's views on speeding links up to other areas. It seems to me that motives have and always will be political and not beneficial to the nation as a whole. From my neighbour. From me personally, I'd like to continue on the theme of particular congestion in Ickenham and the effects on the residents in Ickenham. Earlier today, Mr. Strachan kindly used the term I imagine several times. Particularly, I imagine smart traffic management. Well, I imagine gridlock. The 2 exit routes to the M40 from Ickenham are the B466 and B467, Long Lane and Swakeleys Road. They've been discussed at length. But I'd like to share particularly about Swakeleys Road. Like everybody else, I have to get out to the M40, whether for shopping, school, going to the office, going to the airport. Currently, between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., it can take up to 40 minutes to go from my house to through Swakeleys Road to the main roundabout on the M40. Regularly, it takes 30 minutes at those time periods. On that Swakeleys Road section going from where I live all the way to the M40, you have 2 roundabouts creating bottlenecks. the joining from Breakspear Road and the joining from Harville Road. These are the two main roads where lorry traffic is to be added, and certainly those bottlenecks are going to become impossible. Currently, those two, the Harville Road is being further affected by the movement of additional lorries right now to the dump, to the refuse dump that exists on the other side of the railway lines down Harville Road. As lorry traffic is in and out and will be constant, we are going to effectively be trapped inside Ickenham with unfair lengths of time to wait, particularly during rush hour. And I do feel that this is this needs a particular examination, the traffic flows, etc., because there is a certain unfairness in the sense that the residents of Ickenham will be affected in some ways, I believe, more than others. This doesn't need to be the case. I would ask the committee to re-examine spoil removal by the existing railway lines that exist beside the staging in Harville Road. I, of course, cannot make particular detailed comment, but the line is not used a lot at night time, and I cannot see why those lines cannot be used to remove spoil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Two brief views from two other of my neighbours, including someone who lives next door to me. First, Alex Safari is a taxi driver, and there's no doubt that the construction of HS2 and the heavy goods vehicle movements it will generate will affect his livelihood. And this is interesting. I am not against HS2. I would rather it happen than not. But they should consider residents around here, and I think a tunnel extension is something that should be seriously considered. As it is, we struggle with the traffic. A lot of my work is around here. Potentially people might not even use me because it will be impossible to get around, and therefore I will lose a lot of work and get no compensation whatsoever. My next door neighbour, Harry Wright, is 80 years old and spent most of his working life in the RAF before, for 16 years, becoming, I believe, a legendary doorkeeper in the House of Lords. It goes without saying that what could be the last fully active decade of Harry's life could be made a misery by the impact of HS2 construction. It will affect the whole village. At the moment, traffic is so bad. If they're going to start bringing more lorries to Ickenham, it will be terrible, says Harry. I ask myself, is HS2 essential or merely desirable? I don't even think it is desirable, never mind essential. I have loved railways all my life, but now I am sorry this is a bridge too far, so far as I'm concerned. Extend the tunnel and get rid of the spoil by rail. That would be fine. We could have gone for a filibuster, and I got similar views from just about every person on our road, but those will represent real people in a railroad in Ickenham and how I think they will be affected. We absolutely do not rely on not in our backyard arguments. Everyone knows major projects, some people will suffer, though, as you've heard this morning, some more attention should be made to adequate compensation, I believe. The compensation line cuts Bushy Road in half, even though everyone will suffer to a considerable degree. The argument we make is one of disproportionate harm. The Ickenham community of more than 11,500 people and beyond the immediate area will suffer to an unreasonable degree. Gridlock traffic from up to 1,000 heavy goods vehicle movements a day. Never mind the phasing or what road they go down. The point is the spoil has to be moved out by road, and gridlock will be the result, really quite often. And obvious, as you've heard before, difficulty of access for emergency vehicles, pollution, enduring noise without any benefit to the local community. Only a tunnel extension that takes HS2 beyond Ickenham will suffice as a fair remedy. Everything else amounts to little more than window dressing. We do not accept that the best engineering brains in this country, and there is a tradition of brilliant engineering in this country, cannot find a way to remove spoil from such an extension other than through the roads of Ickenham. Crossrail, as you very well know, has built a 42-kilometre tunnel under London. A lot of the spoil has gone out by rail. And guess what? There have been very, very few complaints about such a major project. And it's a subjective judgment, but I do think that the Crossrail executives have handled their impact on local communities rather better than HS2 appears to be doing. If HS2 continues to maintain that a tunnel extension will itself lead to serious congestion, as I believe they did last week, and nothing can be done about it, then we move into different territories of argument. Such disproportionate harm begins to call into question the overall benefits and rationale for the entire project. Finally, HS2 is a 19th century solution to a problem that barely exists. Just think of the public good that could be created by alternative public good by £50 billion of public spending or spending in public projects. High-speed, I hope I know something about communications. It's something I've devoted my working life to. Just think of high-speed broadband for all and the economic impact that would mean, rather than getting to Birmingham a little bit faster than in the past. And even, dare I say it, paying for the rebuilding of these august premises. £7 billion, easy if this project doesn't go ahead. But for now, the residents of Bushy Road, Ickenham, are asking for fairness from government, and that in the long term can only be provided by one thing: a tunnel extension. I commend that idea to you. And one final summing up sentence from my two neighbours and colleagues. Jamie?
I would just like to sum up by saying, we understand the project has to go ahead, or is going to go ahead, for the reasons that you've got. But to please reconsider where you're going to send the traffic and consider the effects that will have on Ickenham and the residents of Ickenham. Because without question of a doubt, it will have a big, major impact on our lives, and for many lives that I've heard this morning that basically, for the latter part of their lives is going to see them out, and I just think that's totally unfair.
And I'd just like to follow on that and say this congestion issue I believe to be the biggest issue. It's going to last for a long time. It's going to spoil a lot of people's lives in the area, and if the committee can take a relook at, we do not understand when there is railway lines running right beside the Harville Road site, why at night time trucks cannot be loaded at that site and the spoil be removed down the railway lines. I just don't understand why that cannot happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Was the splash, the backwash before I even demonstrated it at all.
Peter's in charge of housekeeping. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some of the points you raised on the principles of the project are beyond our pay grade.
I know that, but you're members of Parliament, and this has not been fully voted through, as you very well know.
And I would also make the point that we do share your concern about traffic in this area. We're very much aware that there's a real problem and there needs to be solutions. There's no simple, ideal solution. Otherwise, Hillingdon Borough Council officers would have found one for existing traffic problems.
Yeah.
But Mr. Strawn.
Can I try and deal with what I understand to be a misunderstanding or misapprehension as to the way in which the railway is constructed in this area, and the concern that spoil, as it's put, is being taken out by road. And I think the best way I can just demonstrate this, I know the committee's heard this, but I'll just show you the phase plan again, because it's important that this is understood correctly. P6209. In the course of this, I'll answer the question about levels of traffic on the specific roads. I think that was a question raised by Mr. Langton. And going back to the phasing slides, which show what is going on at different phases of the project. And you'll recall from this that phase 1 is an 18-month phase during which the sites in the area, the construction sites, are generally speaking being set up, and there are comparatively lower levels of traffic coming in along these roads that are in question. The Swakeleys Road one, which I'm just pointing to over here, is at this stage 80 HGVs each way during the day, and that's splitting off 30 up to Harville Road, 30 Breakspear Road South, and 20 to Ickenham High Road, each going to the setup of the sites. The phase 2 is when there is a peak period of HGV movements in the area, 6210, 6210, P6210. And obviously this is the level of traffic that's caused most concern in the local community. But it's wrong to treat it as a 10-year construction traffic. You'll see at this point, for a period of 9 months in phase 2, if we go back to Swakeleys Road, the prediction is 530 HGVs each way daily, so it's a daily flow, and that is for 9 months only. The bulk of that is going up Harville Road, 480 HGVs. The bulk of it's going up Harville Road, up to this the North Holt area. And the reason for that is not exportation of spoil, it's importation of materials to construct the trace for the railway. And that is what is occurring in that 9-month period. At the same time, as Mr. Smarts previously explained to you, as quickly as possible, a railhead a cutting's been created and a railhead created so that when the tunnelling starts in this area, the North Holt tunnelling, the spoil that comes out goes out by rail through the railhead that's created. As much as possible goes out by rail. So it's not, there is a misapprehension, I understand it, in terms of why so much spoil is going out by road. It isn't. It is the importation for a short period to create the trace, and thereafter setting up as soon as possible the railheads which enable the railhead which enables in the subsequent phases the minimisation of traffic in the area. And that's why in the longer phase 4 and 5 you see phase 4 the level of traffic drops right down whilst the spoil is going out. If I could just show you phase 4, which is a 3-year period. HS 6 to 12. Six to 12, please. Sorry for the delay in the screen, but it's a level of detail on the slides. And you'll see the same plans. I'll just anticipate what it's going to show. At this stage, the level of HGV traffic to Breakspear Road South, which is a concern to these particular residents, and of course Swakeleys Road towards High Road has dropped to 0 because there isn't HGV construction activity now taking place via the roads. And at this stage, in the Copthall cutting area, the tunnel support area is up and running, the railhead's in place, and the spoil generated by the tunnelling goes out by rail. You do have 100 HGVs coming up Swakeleys Road in one direction daily, servicing the concrete batching or the concrete segment plant, which is concrete coming in. That would be the same in any situation. You recall we looked at other potential situations at TfL depot. That level of traffic is necessary to provide material for concreting. It's not spoil going out. And of course, the general approach is the project will use as many rail paths as are available to it to minimise road traffic as far as it can. But on a worst case scenario, we're looking at these sorts of levels of traffic coming in to serve the concrete manufacturing plant for the tunnel segments. So that is a 3-year period whilst the tunnelling is going on, and then there's a 4-year period, which I don't take you to again. The traffic dropped right down, I think, to 20 or 30 HGVs on the road, because it's the fit-out phase when the railway, having been constructed, the trace has been constructed, the materials to fit out the railway are brought in by the railhead that's been constructed, and there's a 4-year period of fit-out. Now, it's important. The reason I just go through that again is I just want to put it and make it properly understood that yes, of course, there's construction traffic of concern generated by the construction of HS2 in this area, but it is not over a 10-year period. The peak period is that limited 9-month period, which I've indicated, and it's not as a result of spoil going out. It is a result of the construction of the trace, whilst the intention is to take as much spoil out by rail, which is precisely the sort of thing the petitioners were referring to.
We're very sorry we'll come back at the end when you've finished all the rest, but what would be in our minds, the minds of most people listening, is first of all, it doesn't actually really matter what a lorry is carrying. No. It's the lorry presence which you can say it at the end if you can Ray gives you a chance. And the second thing is that although most of the traffic during that phase 2, which is the intense one, is in Harville Road, my guess is that when Harville Road is full, people find other ways, and you may get diverted traffic going on to Breakspear Road South and the likes.
Yes, well, I recognise that people aren't concerned with what's in the back of a truck when it passes by. I recognise that. But what I was addressing was the notion that this could be cured by the creation of more railhead space. That it can't, because that's not in fact what it's doing. It's bringing in material which has to be brought in by road at the earliest stage. So that's the only reason I make the point. I recognise the point that's been made. And in terms of displacement, yes, of course, displacement is something that can occur from congestion, and that's recognised in the traffic model. But that's one of the reasons why we're looking at these traffic junctions to see what the effects will be and what could be done if there is a materially worsening of the situation during these periods. So that is at least a partial answer to what's been said.
It's being cited in some of the areas, and it's by having off-road tracks for the vehicles.
Where exactly the sustainable placement areas are located and served by haul routes within the sites. And the reason why there's sustainable placement, although we've done, as you've heard, a number of things to try and reduce the amount in the area by using as much of the railhead area as possible. But the reason why that's occurring is precisely to avoid generating even more traffic by putting sustainable placement material back into trucks and exporting it back through the road network. So that's why those sustainable placement areas occur, but they are serviced off the main roads. So that is the overall picture. Can I just add one little dimension to this, because there was mention of the TfL depot, and we've already indicated that we're going to look further at that in light of the comments that were made. There are a number of fundamental problems we've identified with that, but whatever the situation, the sort of generations of traffic that we were talking about are inevitable under the tunnelling, the Hillingdon tunnelling scheme, or indeed relocation of depots, for the similar sorts of reasons that I've mentioned that would apply here. So there isn't a cure if that's what's been suggested by the sorts of solutions that you other petitioners are putting forward. So I think the main focus of the petitioner's concern was about traffic congestion, which I've answered. There is, so far as traffic management of traffic, I just, again, repeat, there's quite a lot of detail in the Code of Construction Practice dealing with things like road maintenance, wheel washing. I know that's of lesser concern, but there are a number of measures in there which cover those sorts of environmental controls of the effect of construction traffic in the area.
Okay.
Thank you. And very briefly, we were not under the misapprehension that exactly the same number of lorries would be continuing for a decade, as you seem to imply. Of course, projects have different phases. But what I think HS2 could be under a serious misapprehension is that this potential traffic problem, however many lorries down whatever number of roads, can be somehow magicked away in a system where there are very few main roads, and where even before the start of HS2 you can be trapped if something goes wrong, as we've heard this morning. Badly parked lorry, an accident. It's not what happens in one road, but it's the overall weight and density of traffic in this. We like to call it a village, but that's an affectation. It's a increasingly densely populated suburban area, and every new person that comes in, I'm afraid, brings 2 cars with them, and it's already actually becoming a nightmare. So we're talking about the last 5 or 10% of traffic which could flow from this project, which actually will damage your project. You won't be able to get your goods out or in because of the reality of the geography of roads in this area. I'm not sure HS2 has fully taken that point on board.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. I note that there are 106 other petitioners as part of your petition.
We are happy to leave you in peace.
And clearly what you've told us built up a picture which we're very much aware of. There's going to be real problems here that somehow going to be managed as the project.
And we wanted it down to not statistics, but real people's lives.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
Right, we now move to petitions 728, 717, 730, Donovan and others. Mr. Donovan, I'm going to adjourn at 12:30, so we're going to be spilling over till after lunch. So you've got about 20 minutes to do the first part of your presentation, and if you don't finish, we'll continue after lunch at 2 o'clock. Okay, thank you for waiting patiently.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm John Donovan. This is Beryl Upton and Rob Owen Jones. We all live in Toylake Crescent, and originally we were going to present petitions individually, but in order to save time and constant repetition, we thought we'd present them jointly, but each one of us concentrating on a different aspect of our concerns.
Okay, great.
Can I have slide A11091, please? This petition, as I say, is being made jointly by us. We live in Hornett-White Crescent, and when we carried out the petition for the whole road, we got 264 petitioners. They signed the original petitions, and we're presenting these jointly to save time. Could I have slide A11092, please? This is just to demonstrate that it's a purely residential area with a mixture of houses and bungalows, some semi-detached, some detached. It's made up of families with children, couples, and people living on their own.
The Hoylake Crescent is the one that goes round the area of the Bushy Road and the closest we were talking about before.
Yeah, it links from Swakeleys Road, and it's a semicircle back into Swakeleys Road. There's also a school in Hoylake Crescent which is bounded by Hoylake Crescent and Bushy Road. The pictures hopefully kind of demonstrate that it's a nice area to live in. It's clean. People take a pride in their properties, and it's a very nice place to live. Could I have slide 3, please? In the area that we're petitioning for, there's 321 houses in these roads, and that's not counting Bushy Road or Wallasey Crescent. Bushy Road you've just heard the petitioners from, and a petitioner from Wallasey Crescent will be speaking to you later. But all of these roads will be severely affected by noise, pollution, traffic congestion and property blight during construction and also when the line's fully operational. Perhaps just a very quick reminder of how we got to where we are now. The proposed route for HS2, the one that now was not the initial preferred route, and as we all know, this route was chosen to provide a link to Heathrow. Heathrow's already got fairly good transport links and was shortly linked up with Crossrail. And one reason for not tunnelling through Ickenham was this need to have a spur to Heathrow during phase 1 or 2. It's now been shown that it could be built underground if there is a link needed, and the link will probably never be built because I think David Cameron said some time ago that he wasn't in favour of an expansion at Heathrow. And it seems very unreasonable that local residents are being subjected to all this noise disruption, which will probably go on for most of their lives, for a reason which probably will never happen. Slide 4, please. This is my home, and I'm only showing it really as a demonstration of the types of properties and how they're looked after in the area. My wife and I are now both in our early 70s, and we moved here in 1993. And as many other people have said, they've moved here and they've stayed here. When we bought the house, it was exactly what we wanted. It was a 3-bedroom bungalow, freehold, open space at the back with local shops, good strong local community, parks and good local transport. And I suppose as time went by, we thought we'd probably stay here until age or infirmity forced us, or death forced us to move or just go. But now, along with lots of other people, we're in the situation of wondering whether we should stay or whether we should move. I mean, the prospects of living with noise and pollution, possibly for the rest of your life, is not a very appealing one. The disruption during construction between West Ruislip and Breaksfield Road across the back of Hoylake Crescent will be unbearable, I think, and with noise from the 2 conveyor belts and the light railway, and that's going to continue for 3 years, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and I don't think anybody could reasonably be expected to live with that. The noise levels of the conveyor belts has not really been assessed, but we've been told by industry experts that the noise from them will be considerable. There seems to be some confusion over plans to prevent noise from these conveyor belts. We were told at a recent PRD meeting that no mitigation was planned, but we've seen photos in HS2 documents showing conveyor belts with covers, and Beryl will be talking to you about this a bit later on. Also, HS2 Limited said that any noise or pollution from these conveyor belts and light railway will be the responsibility of the contractors. Well, we think that it should be their responsibility because once the contractors start work, it's going to be too late to do very much about it. Can I have the promoters exhibit P6617, please? This exhibit actually shows a 2.4 metre fence on both sides of a line which is called the on-site traffic loop. And we're not entirely sure what that is.
It's not up yet.
No, it may not come up. It's P6617.
What's it look like?
Well, to save time, perhaps we can come back to that.
It's cross section. 6. Is it during construction or
during construction?
6727 is a similar plan.
think.
It's Griffith Jones-Owen residence.
Oh, I see. This is one. There are a number of cross sections, but this one is taken from Hoylake Crescent. Sorry, it's not identical.
On here.
6617.
It's the Griffith Jones.
It's in the set of the petitions of Rob Griffith Jones. Tab 16. Rob Griffith Jones. Exactly.
Right, so here, far side, on both sides of that. Right. So here, where we've got on-site traffic route, to the left of it, it says a 2.4 metre high fence, and then to the right of it, it says a 2.4 high metre fence showing two fences. And we can't find any explanation as to what they're for, or if they're going to be permanent. So maybe we could have an answer on that. If we could perhaps move on to exhibit P6619. This shows a 3 metre noise barrier either side of the HS2 line. At a recent PRD meeting, we were told it was going to be 5 metres and may drop to 3 metres along certain sections. We'd just like some clarification as to why this barrier changes height. And if there's a barrier on the north side between the HS2 line and the golf course, is any noise or sound from those trains going to be reflected back over towards Hoylake Crescent? If I could have slide A11095, please. This is King George V playing field. It's a sports field. It's used regularly by people, cricket club, football clubs, rugby clubs. It's also used by local schools and children. And the existing Chiltern line is separated from Hoylake Crescent by this strip of land. It's about 100 metres away from where I live, my property, the Chiltern line, that is. And all residents were obviously aware of the Chiltern line being fairly close to where they lived when they bought their houses. And the low noise levels have never ever really been a problem for anybody as far as I'm aware. But unlike HS2, while slightly further away, noise levels will be in excess again of what could be considered reasonable for anybody to live with. And when phase 1 is operational, it's anticipated to be 28 trains an hour. That's 14 in each direction, 1 train every 2.15 minutes. When phase 2 comes into operation, this will increase to 36 trains an hour, 18 in each direction, 1 train every 1.6 minutes. And these will be operating from 5 a.m. to midnight, Monday to Saturday, and 8 a.m. to midnight on Sunday. So the noise, the constant noise from these trains is obviously going to affect everybody living nearby. They won't be able to spoil their enjoyment entirely. They won't be able to use their gardens. They'll have to live indoors with the windows closed. There'll be virtually no break whatsoever in the noise if you've got trains passing every 1.6 minutes. One important point that we feel is extremely important is that the noise levels predicted by HS2 seem to be based on average levels, which are far lower than actual noise levels. The noise levels created by an individual train is going to be much, much higher than that based on an average level. And these should therefore be revised and taken into account. The noise will increase as 2 trains pass each other, and no account seems to have been made for this. So again, the noise levels will actually increase with no consideration given to that whatsoever. In the environmental statement, HS2 themselves say there will be significant adverse noise impacts as a direct result of the overground high-speed railway. So obviously this is going to affect everybody's life, their health, their sleep, and just totally ruin people's lives. Can I have slide 6, please? This kind of gives a visual indication of the impact HS2 will have as it starts to rise to clear the River Pin and Breakspear Road south. The overhead gantries will be clearly visible. What you're looking at now is the Chiltern line as it rises up on the embankment to clear Breakspear Road south. So the HS2 train will be to the north of those behind them, with a wall possibly 3 metres high, possibly 5 metres high, but above that the gantries will still be visible. So we're going to end up with what is now a relatively open, unobstructed view being totally ruined. The noise levels and the pollution during the entire construction period, which according to the environmental statement will last for 10 years, gives no clear undertaking of how they propose to eliminate the risk to the health and well-being of residents on a total range of issues, from the noise of the conveyor belts between West Ruislip and Breakspear Road South, taking away waste material, again, as I say, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to how the polluting HGV lorries will be able to safely travel on local roads which are already heavily congested without bringing the whole area to a standstill. There's been talk of remodelling the traffic figures, but it seems to us that all that's going to happen is you'll keep putting in the same basic information and each time hoping for a different result. So good luck with that. There are many issues that will affect the residents of Hoylake Crescent and the surrounding area. The environment assessment did not fully assess or understand the impact on the area. We feel it may be fine as an academic exercise, but it has little in common with the real world. One point we raised with HS2 in the PRD consultation was that the benefits, there are no benefits for local residents, and the reply we got was very similar to the one they gave to Jill Watson. They said, well, you could always go to Old Oak Common, and then from to get there you need to go on the central line from West Ruislip. Well, I checked on the timetable, it's 19 minutes from West Ruislip to North Acton, and then it's a half a mile walk from North Acton to Old Oak Common. So I think it's probably a benefit most of us feel we could easily live without. We're working on the assumption that HS2 may go ahead. We asked that the tunnel be extended to the other side of the Colne Valley. It's the only truly effective mitigation for Ickenham, and as you are obviously aware, the London Borough of Hillingdon commissioned 2 independent reports, both of which show a tunnel extension is a better option, environmentally and technically. I think the argument, one of the arguments against it was that it was going to cost an extra £580 million. Well, we feel that that needs closer examination, and it should not just be accepted because that's what HS2 say. In addition, even with the additional costs, surely some value must be placed on the effect that putting this railway overground is going to have on people's lives. The constant noise and the effects on their health, which is, the effects of noise on health is quite well known. Maybe they should have considered the problems that would arise by putting it overground and built into the original budget some kind of an allowance for putting it through a tunnel if the overground route was rejected. It seems in some cases that money matters and sometimes it doesn't. They're saying that £580 million is too much. But there was an article in the Wolverhampton Express and Star on the 19th of June when the Chiltern District Councillor, Seb Berry, submitted a Freedom of Information Act asking for figures. And the reply he got was, HS2 replied saying, "We do not hold this information," and the Department for Transport said, "I'm writing to advise you that following a thorough search of our paper and electronic records, I have established that the information you request is not held by this department because we have no business need to examine the cost of HS2 at 2015 prices. So either money does matter or money doesn't matter. I'm sorry?
It's only 500 million.
Well, if they say they don't really need to know what it costs in 2015, when they set the budget in about 5 years ago, I mean, obviously the budget's going to be wrong, I would imagine. So the tunnel is really the only truly effective form of mitigation that we can see. The wall that is being proposed would not stop the noise, and HS2 admit this, and apart from anything else, it would disfigure the landscape, not be terribly effective, and the gantries will still be visible. So I suppose if HS2 still refuse to extend the tunnel, we've got to look at some form of mitigation. So we would ask that contractors work uniform hours, 8 till 5, Monday to Friday across the and unlikely to happen, I guess. Could I have slide 7, please? There's lines of mature trees across a certain part of King George V playing field, and the trees are at the edge of the field between the field and the Chiltern line, with another row between the Chiltern line and the proposed HS2 line. We'd like these trees to be kept because they would partly obscure the HS2 and also hopefully slightly reduce any noise from it. Can I have slide 6 again, please? As I said earlier, this embankment shows the Chiltern line beginning to rise up as it approaches Breakspear Road south. And there's no screening at all at this point because all the trees were cut down in 2013 when Network Rail carried out some work on the embankment. So we'd like to see trees planted there now, mature trees planted now, so they've got a chance to grow before HS2 comes into operation. And again, partly to obscure the view and perhaps partly to try and cut down on the noise. Any mitigation that is put in place, we feel must be inspected and maintained to ensure it remains effective. And monitoring systems should be put in place during construction to prevent structural damage to properties close by. And if any damage is caused, it must be immediately rectified and steps taken to make sure it's not repeated. And as time goes by, and no doubt mitigation methods to combat noise and vibration are developed, these should be brought in to replace any existing mitigation methods. On the compensation side, can I have slide 8? The compensation being offered, as other people have said, is totally unsatisfactory and unjust. The number of residents affected will be fairly high. The compensation band should be widened to allow more people to be compensated. £7,500 or £22,500 for those outside the rural support zone is inadequate for having your life changed for the worse by noise, disruption, pollution and property blight. Residents in all bands should be offered the option of the voluntary purchase scheme. There should be no means testing and no restrictions. Residents should be free to move as and when they wish and not become trapped in their homes. The compensation being proposed will not cover the cost cover the loss between pre-HS2 values and current values once this gets the assent to go ahead. Legal fees, removal costs, upset. There's no allowance for any upset and distress caused by being forced to move. An example of how unjust the compensation levels are is if I were to move and suffered just a 10% reduction in the value of my house, that combined with an estate agent fee, legal fee, survey fee, removal cost, the cost to me personally, I've worked out after checking, would be around about £80,000, which I couldn't stand. And this and similar losses would obviously apply to any other resident trapped within those zones. The potential loss in value to homes due to difficulty in selling as a result of HS2 has not been fairly or properly assessed. The number of homes in the rural support zone, which is 60 metres to 120 metres for the area covered by these petitions, we believe is 8, which are marked as white crosses on the top of the diagram. It seems to us that houses adjacent to it and within the 120 to 180 metre zone will obviously be as badly affected by noise as those in the rural support zone as shown now. And it's another argument for expanding those bands. There's already some concern about living and moving to the area because we've had the Ickenham Residents Association had an email just at the beginning of May, and it was sent from a Gillian Baines, and she said, "We're in the process of buying a house in Hoylake Crescent, but after reading the Ickenham Residents Association website stating about vibration affecting 200 properties and noise, we are a little concerned. Also, can you tell us what work is being done at the present time on the far side of the Chiltern line?" So, and then I personally received an email on the 13th of May from another lady, Caroline Blackmore, and she said, "We are considering the purchase of a property on Hoylake Crescent." She gives the house number, "but have come across your details during our HS2 research. Would it be possible for you to provide your insight into how Hoylake Crescent will be affected both during and after the construction? And what is the likelihood of extending the tunnel so Ickenham is not as affected so much after completion?" I won't go on and read the rest of it, but you can see from that people are already very concerned about moving to the area, and as time goes by it's going to make it much more difficult for anybody living there to actually sell and move if they need to or want to.
Okay. Have you got much more, or are you almost there?
No, I don't mind stopping there and carrying. There's not a great deal, but I'm quite happy to carry on afterwards. A couple of minutes.
I think we'd better adjourn then, because Mr. Vyners has got a meeting with somebody outside.
Yeah,
so
okay.
We'll have the light of you at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much, Mr. Donovan. Order.
Committee Room 5, sound. 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 Committee Room 5, sound.